I consider myself an average woodworker. And honestly, I think that's where most of us are. We didn't apprentice under master craftsmen
I like to build stuff.
or attend prestigious woodworking schools. We learned by building projects, making mistakes, and figuring things out as we went. But the only way to get better is to challenge yourself. So today, I'm stepping outside my comfort zone and attempting one of my most ambitious projects yet. A fine woodworking jewelry box for my wife using techniques I've never tried before. It's go time. The first thing I'm going to do is figure out how to cut 2 holes on the front panel of the box. You might be asking, why not cut and surface your parts to rough dimensions first? And that is a logical thought. The answer to that would be because the nice people at the United States Postal Service seem to have a very hard time sticking to delivery date schedules, and my wood order for this project is late. But it's all good. I'll get this step figured out while I patiently wait. Anyway, the holes I need to cut will allow 2 drawers to pass through. But they're in the center of the board, and I need to cut them without cutting through the edges of the board. I would normally use my CNC for this job, but in the spirit of trying new techniques and learning on this build, that just seemed lazy. So instead, I'm going to use my CNC to cut out a template, and then later on, I can use my router with the template and a template bit to cut out the holes. Shazam! Problem 1 solved. Cutting out the template is the easy part. We'll see how it goes when it's time to actually use the template. So fast forward a few days, and some angry calls to USPS, and my wood still hasn't arrived. You guys will love the conversation I had with USPS. It went something like this. Hi, I'm calling to ask about my package.
Our records show that a shipping label was created, and USPS is awaiting receipt of the item.
Oh, okay. But I called the wood company and they said USPS picked it up last week.
Okay, sir. Please wait 10 years for the package to arrive, and if it doesn't show up, please bend over and kick yourself in the ass. Have a nice day.
I splurged on the wood and shelled out some serious dough for some figured maple and walnut, but I guess I'm going to have to pivot and use that on a future project. Luckily, I still have some decent wood left over for some older projects that I can use. I have a nice piece of bird's eye maple and a walnut bench top that I took off a mudroom project I built. I ended up using a live edge piece as the bench for that project. It's going to be a little bit more work to break down the walnut bench, but it comes from a nice slab, so I think it'll be worth it. So I'm going to get all my pieces for the jewelry box carcass cut to rough dimensions, and while I'm doing that, we can talk about the plan. I'm going to use bevels with brass splines for the main joinery on the box carcass. This is a new technique for me because in 10 years of woodworking, I've never actually used splines before. On top of that, I have no idea how I'm going to trim the brass to fit in the splines perfectly, but we'll worry about that when we get to that step. I'm using brass hardware for the drawer pulls, hinges, and feet as well, so this thing is coordinated as shit. Martha Stewart would be proud.
Martha Stewart. Fuck Martha Stewart.
It's going to have 2 drawers on the bottom that will be lined with these snazzy organizers I picked up, and then a third compartment will be at the top and accessed through a hinge top. I'm going to use wooden drawer runners primarily because that's what I've seen every other shop use. I feel like wooden runners may be a problem when the wood moves, but hey, what do I know? I just work here. I'm undecided on the joinery I want to use for the drawer boxes, and I've built plenty of challenges into this build already, so I'm going to try and keep those simple. I may just use rabbets, but I may also use miters with brass splines for the drawer boxes as well. To be determined. I'm going to cut out some circular depressions for the drawer pulls to sit in, which will give the drawers an interesting focal point. And I'm going to cut another depression between the box carcass and the hinge top to serve as a way to open the lid. Not 100% sure how I'm going to tackle that one yet either. Lastly, the most important part of this design is management approval. And we're a go. So I've got all my pieces for the box carcass milled and cut to rough dimensions. I'm not sure why I keep calling it a box carcass, except that I don't know what else to call it. Box unit? Box frame? Oh, a pretty butterfly. Now we need to cut some dados, rabbets, and bevels in these pieces, and then put in the drawer guides and some pieces for the top compartment to sit on. It will be much easier to add all of these features now versus after I assemble the box. I picked up a flat bottom blade with a 1/4 inch kerf recently, and I've been waiting for a project to use it on. I used to make 1/4 inch dados with my regular 1/8 inch kerf table saw blade by taking 2 passes or throwing in a dado stack. But the first technique is prone to inaccuracy, and the latter takes too much time, so this should be an upgrade. Earlier I mentioned that I consider myself an average woodworker, and I wanted to explain what I meant by that. It's not because I like putting myself down or minimizing what I've accomplished. It's just that when I look at the world of fine woodworking, I see a level of craftsmanship that I haven't yet reached. My journey started with DIY projects around the house. I built a trash can enclosure, a trellis for our old shed, and I built some shelving for our basement. Eventually, I bought my first miter saw and started taking on beginner woodworking projects. I built raised garden beds, a planter box, and a couch for our front porch. After those first few projects, I was completely hooked. I think what drew me in was how quickly you could turn a pile of lumber into something useful and impressive. Wood is easy to work with compared to a lot of other materials. It's incredibly versatile, and with just a handful of cuts, you can create some pretty cool projects. From there, I started taking on bigger and bigger builds. I sold some of the things I made, which let me add more tools to the shop, and I steadily improved my skills. Heck, I even designed and built my shed from scratch, and it turned out pretty well. But when I look back at many of those projects, I see something interesting. They were challenging, they required skill, they taught me a lot, but I wouldn't put all of them in the same category as what I consider to be fine woodworking. Building a shed, an entryway table, shop cabinets, or storage projects is absolutely woodworking. But those projects often don't demand the same level of planning, intricate joinery, precision, and craftsmanship that traditional furniture making or fine woodworking requires. Maybe you've noticed a shift in my channel lately. I've been spending a lot more time building hand tool storage, shop jigs, and learning traditional techniques. That's because I feel like I'm standing at the edge of the next stage of this journey. I want to see if I can tackle some of these more advanced woodworking projects and develop the skills that come along with them. I'll admit, there's a little nervousness that comes with that. Whenever you try something new, there's always the possibility that you'll fail. But we never really know what we're capable of until we try. So maybe you can be the judge. Do you think there's a meaningful difference between woodworking and fine woodworking? Do projects like sheds, shop furniture, storage solutions, and home improvement builds belong in the woodworking category? I'd love to hear what you guys think. Getting back to the build. It's been pretty smooth sailing. There haven't been any major mistakes and everything is going according to plan at this point. Something that won't last too much longer, unfortunately. I've noticed that every woodworking project follows the same pattern. For a while, everything goes according to plan. I've taken the time to design the project, thought about the problems I'm likely to face, researched techniques if I'm trying something new, and then I execute. And when that happens, woodworking is pretty damn fun. You start thinking, maybe I actually know what I'm doing. The cuts are clean, the joinery fits, everything makes sense, and for a brief moment, you feel like you're pretty good at this whole woodworking thing. Life is harmonious. Then the project takes a turn. Something goes wrong. Maybe the plan wasn't as good as you thought. Maybe you rushed a step. Maybe you didn't think something through. Maybe you're trying a new technique and it completely falls apart. Whatever the reason, the storm clouds roll in fast. Suddenly you feel like a complete hack. A piece of your project may end up airborne and land somewhere across the shop, and you can't stop thinking about how satisfying it would be to ruin someone's day. And so the cycle continues. You feel good, you feel bad. You feel proud, you want to steal a kid's ice cream cone.
Ice cream?
But in those tough moments, I want you to remember something. That's how everyone does it. We all see those project videos online where everything looks perfect. Every joint lines up, there are no gaps, no mistakes, no glue-up disasters. And you sit there thinking, man, I'm not even close to that good. Why am I even trying? But that's total crap. Those videos aren't reality. Sure, there may be 1% of woodworkers out there who create a Mona Lisa every time they pick up a chisel, but for the vast majority of us, that's not how it works. We make mistakes, we screw things up, we fix them, we learn, we move on to the next project. That's woodworking. So if you're watching this and any of it resonates with you, I want you to know something. You're doing great. Don't worry about what everyone else is building. Don't worry about what people think. Don't compare your behind the scenes to someone else's highlight reel. Just keep building, keep learning, keep making mistakes. And most importantly, just do you. So finally, after almost a week in on the project, my wood order arrives. Thank you, USPS. Regardless of their shenanigans, for me, getting a package of freshly milled hardwood is kind of like the clown from It getting to suck the soul out of an innocent child. No better feeling in the world. Anywho, last thing to do before I glue this baby up is cut the figured maple for the top. Earlier, I said I was going to use a nice piece of bird's eye maple, but now that my wood order has come in, I'm going to go with a beautiful curly maple that came in the order. Since I've already cut the rabbets in the top of my walnut pieces, I can cut this curly maple to rough dimensions and then sneak up on a perfect fit with my shooting board. So that brings us to the glue up for the main box. I do a dry fit first, and everything is lining up really good so far. I do have to admit I was dreading the glue up, because the glue up tends to be a bit chaotic for me. I've had projects get out of hand quick, and then I end up running around like a greased pig at a county fair.
Come on, little piggy!
Thankfully though, this particular glue up went nice and smooth. Everything lined up, I applied my strap clamps, which come in clutch by the way, and I went on my merry way. So now, we have our box. And that brings me to another technique I've been wanting to try. I first came across it on a great YouTube channel called Biscuit Tree Woodworks. I highly recommend it if you haven't seen it already. This approach to box making is new to me. In the past, I've always built boxes by assembling the top and bottom separately, like I did in my shadow box build. While that method works, it leaves more room for error. With this technique, you assemble the entire box as a single unit, installing both the top and bottom panels from the start. In other words, you create what is essentially a completely closed box. Once it's assembled, you quote-unquote open it by cutting the lid free with a table saw. To do this, set the blade height so it cuts almost, but not quite, all the way through the sides of the box. Make a cut on all four sides. Then use a handsaw to finish the last small section left uncut. After that, place some sandpaper on a flat surface and sand both pieces until the cut edges are smooth and even. Because the lid and box are created together, not only do you eliminate a step in the process, but you also end up with perfectly matched parts and a much cleaner fit. Working with brass is not entirely new to me. I used some brass accents on the home office I built. That video is in the top right corner if you're interested in checking it out, by the way. In that video, I inlaid some solid brass bars on a coffee table, but I didn't have to cut the brass. For this project, I picked up a 1/8 inch thick brass bar, which should be thick enough to provide support for the miters, but be thin enough that I can cut it without too much difficulty. Having no idea how to go about cutting and shaping brass, I once again consulted my brethren YouTubers and Mr. Google. There's a couple of different ways to go about it, but I settled on using a jigsaw with metal cutting blades to cut the initial triangle shape, then a rough file to shape the brass. That's the theory anyway, but since I'm new to this, I need to try it out on a practice run so I don't botch the final piece. So I'm going to try cutting this brass piece first, and the good news is I am reasonably sure that this is going to work. Call it like 80-20. No, now that I think about it, let's call it 30-70. So that actually worked really well, except for the fact that I forgot to put my safety glasses on and I almost cut a shard in the eye, but it cut good. To cut the spline slots, I used a dedicated spline jig. My goal is to eventually build my own, but I didn't want to spend the time making one for this project. Instead, I picked up a jig from woodpeckers that allowed me to make accurate, repeatable cuts with minimal setup. And I have to say, I'm really pleased with the results. The spline cuts came out great, and now I just need to secure my brass pieces in the slots. I'm using 5-minute epoxy to set these pieces in place, and then I'll come back with 40 grit sandpaper to fine-tune the final fit. Alright, we've reached phase 2 of the project, the all-important drawers. Not only do they need to come out perfectly sized in order to fit around the jewelry organizers, but they also need to be dead square for the drawer runners to work. I decided to stay away from adding brass splines for the drawers and use rabbets for the joinery. But first I need to mill up some more wood for my giant walnut bench, then cut those pieces down to the final dimensions. While I'm doing that, here's the plan for the drawer boxes. After my pieces are all milled and cut to final dimensions, I'm going to get to work on adding a 1/4 inch dado to accept the bottom panel. I'm going to throw my flat bottom 1/4 inch kerf blade back in for this part of the project because I'm going to be using it quite a bit on these drawers. After that, I can flip the side pieces over and cut a 1/4 inch dado down the center for the drawer slides. Lastly, I can add rabbets to the side pieces to accept the front and back drawer pieces. Once that's all done, I can try a test fit around the jewelry organizers. Making these drawers ended up being my favorite part of the project. This was one of those times that the plan worked out. And after my test fit, I was feeling pretty good. Remember earlier though, when I was talking about storm clouds rolling in? Well, here they come. I have to say, I hate glue-ups with every fiber of my soul. I swear, no matter how much I prep and prepare for a glue-up, something still goes wrong, and this build was no exception. The bottom panels for the drawers were slightly large, so I ended up using a block plane to add a slight taper to the sides and get a better fit. But as I was gluing up the first drawer, I decided to replace normal brain activity with a large brain fart. And I put the side of the bottom panel that I had not tapered into the dado. What's worse, before I registered this as a mistake, I thought, why is it such a tight fit? I guess I should whack it in place with a mallet. Idiot! The bottom panel wedged in so tight that when I went to pull it out, the 1/2 inch thick drawer front ripped in two. Thank God it was a clean break because I could glue it back together, and once I put the drawer front on, I'm hoping no one will notice. Thankfully, the next 2 drawer glue-ups went smoothly and without incident. Smooth sailing.
Yes, I will go sailing. Yeah, let's go sailing.
So now is the perfect time to bring up a topic that seems to get most woodworkers fired up. How do you feel about CNCs? There are a lot of woodworkers out there who are traditionalists. They grew up building with hand tools, and I can appreciate the loyalty they have to the craft. Imagine spending decades building furniture with nothing more than hand planes, chisels, and saws. That's hard work. It takes patience, skill, and years of practice. Every project represents thousands of hours spent mastering techniques that most people simply can't do. When you've devoted that much of your life to a craft, it's only natural to become passionate about it. But there's also a growing number of woodworkers who have embraced CNCs because they recognize what they bring to the shop. Used correctly, a CNC can dramatically reduce production time. It can make repetitive tasks incredibly accurate, and it opens the door to projects and designs that many of us simply couldn't create by hand, at least not without years of practice. Some people see that as taking shortcuts. Others see it as simply using the best tool for the job. Personally, I consider myself a hybrid woodworker. I genuinely enjoy working with hand tools. There's something incredibly satisfying about pushing a sharp hand plane through a board and watching a perfect shaving curl off the blade. It's a completely different experience than feeding a board through a machine. And I do think every woodworker benefits from learning at least the fundamentals of hand tools. Understanding how wood behaves, how to tune a plane, or how to pair a joint with a chisel teaches you things that no machine ever will. But I also appreciate everything power tools have done for woodworking. Let's be honest, most of us aren't flattening rough lumber with a scrub plane anymore. We use a jointer, a planer, and a table saw because they're faster, they're consistent, and they let us spend more time building instead of preparing stock. And why wouldn't we? If someone insisted you mill every board by hand before you were allowed to build furniture, most of us would politely tell them where to stick it. The funny thing is, there was a time when jointers, planers, and table saws were the new technology. I'm sure there were traditionalists back then who argued those machines weren't real woodworking either. So why is the CNC any different? To me, it's just another tool. It's not going to replace creativity. It's not going to teach you design. It's not going to magically fix bad woodworking. It simply does certain jobs better than I can. At the end of the day, nobody walks into your shop, looks at a beautiful piece of furniture, and asks whether the mortises were cut with a chisel, a router, or a CNC. They admire the finished piece. So I'm curious, where do you stand? Are you a traditionalist, a CNC enthusiast, or somewhere in the middle like me? Overall, I'm really psyched with how this project turned out. Is it perfect? Absolutely not. And honestly, I'm okay with that, at least for now. I'm a much better woodworker today than I was 10 years ago. And because I keep trying new techniques and pushing myself outside my comfort zone, I'll be even better a year from now. Chiseling the mortises for these hinges definitely challenged me, and it's something I know I can improve on. But that's the whole point. Every project should teach you something. Out of all the new techniques I tried, the box joints and the splines are definitely making another appearance in future builds. And those recessed accents on the drawer fronts, I wasn't sure how they'd look, but they ended up being my favorite detail on the entire piece. I decided against adding a depression to open the lid. In the end, I just didn't think the design needed it, and it works just as well to open the lid with both hands. More than anything though, this build gave me the confidence to tackle something even more challenging next time. I'm thinking more advanced joinery, including the almighty dovetail. So if you'd like to see me inevitably make a few mistakes while learning that, be sure to come back for the next project. As I wrap this one up, I want to leave you with this. Keep building, keep having fun, challenge yourself, and don't forget to appreciate your own work, even if it's not perfect. Thanks so much for watching. And if you'd like to see another project where I push myself to learn some new skills, check out the video where I built my Rubo hybrid workbench. I'll see you over there. What do you think?